Good. Send it. Moshe, you have all 33 groups? Let's hope so. Just call everybody on this thing. Ready? Once you start? Yeah?
There's a blessing. You know what I'm saying? There's both. There's
Okay, let's go.
Welcome everybody, welcome to the Lighthouse Project. I want to go over tonight's generous sponsors. Tonight's sponsor for the full night is Anonymous. In honor of Gedalia Fenster with Hakarat Hatov for his inspiration, for the Zivug of Rachel Esther Bat Leah Reisel, and the Zivug of Parnasa and Refuah of Abraham Shlomo Ben Leah Reisel.
Amen.
Tonight's classes are also in memory of Devorah Fega Bat Shmuel Zichron Lebracha, for the Refuah Shlema of Menachem Mendel Ben Sarah Batya, and for the Refuah Shlema of Reisel Bat Miriam.
Amen.
Tonight's classes are also in memory of Yitzchak Ben Moshe David Zichron Lebracha, Shachin and Leah Naim, and congratulations on a baby boy.
Amen.
And for their grandmas Shloshim Katun Ben Chaim.
Amen.
Jennifer Hannah Franz, in honor of Chanarati Bat Shoshana, Rachel Chaya Bat Malka, Rivka Bat Hadassah, Rachel Sarah for their Shidduch and Emunah, the Shuva Shlema for Menachem Mendel Ben Chanarati, in memory of Chana Dina Etya Bat Chaim Zichron Lebracha, and in honor of Yosef Chaim Bat Shoshana Menucha, he should have no more pain, and in thanks to Gedalia. Bridget Rossi, in honor of her son Nathan David Ben Batsheva Bridget, may he find inner peace, happiness, and da'at.
Amen.
Anonymous, in memory of Edward David Shaul Zichrono Lebracha, thanks to Gedalia for the impact in his listeners' lives. Hashem should bless him.
Amen.
Anonymous, in honor of the Refuah Shlema Shoshana Bat Ahuva, Netanel Arya Bat Shoshana, and Ayelet Bat Leah.
Amen.
Morris and Stella Miri in California, in memory of Stella's father, Mordechai Ben Rivka Zichrono Lebracha.
Amen.
Anonymous, in memory of Frida Bat Sarah Zichron Lebracha, and in thank you to Gedalia. And finally, Anonymous, in honor of Eliyahu Asher and Elisheva Ahava B'nai Michla Esther, may they always have good health and stay on the Torah path. And Refuah Shlema of Adi Bat Le'an and Julia, 2 toddlers that are fighting cancer, they should have Refuah Shlema. Thank you very
Amen.
much.
Guys, thank you for coming. Mike, close the door. Thank you guys for coming. We have a great class tonight. Mind over mood. Mind over mood. This class is going to deal with many things. Shalom Bayit, self-esteem, Parnasa, dating. It's about everything. Mind over mood. We need to understand today, we make about 90% of our decisions based on how we feel, based on our mood. 90%. So not controlling one's mood today can lead one to very, 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 very bad states. I can't tell you the amount of people that I try to help with Shalom Bayit, with marriages, with dating, and I can't tell you, it's all over one comment that sometimes destroys a relationship. Not 2 comments, 1 comment. I was helping a friend of mine that he's getting a divorce for a toilet seat. Let me explain to you how silly this thing is. This is what happens when you don't question your thinking. All of a sudden, what happened? His boss called him lazy. Next thing you know, came home with that feeling that He's sensitive to being lazy. Next thing you know, his wife says, do me a favor, can you just put the toilet seat up? When you go to the bathroom, just put it down. What, are you calling me lazy? What kind of abusive wife are you? What kind of this? What kind of that? What kind of that? All she said is to put the toilet seat down. She didn't call you lazy. She didn't call you that. She didn't call you that. But one line. If a person's in his mind saying, I'm lazy, then any little comment that anybody's going to make, boom, it's going to start the fire. Next thing, he's getting a divorce for a toilet seat. I said, why didn't you guys, this happened 2 years ago. It never got questioned. You never thought about it twice. Next thing you know, it's too late. The attorneys already got involved. So this is the extent of where people are going down for. And I see it all the time. And we need to understand our evil inclination does one thing. It makes things worse than it is. We have an evil inclination, we have a good inclination, and we have an evil inclination. The job of the evil inclination is to do one thing, to make things worse than it is. We need to also understand that our mood is our shadow of our self-esteem. And mood determines also what things mean to us. I can't tell you, doing this class, I was tested this whole week about this exact topic, the whole week. Thank God I was prepared. And I recognized that I created a space. David Lieberman says something very, very strong. David Lieberman is an amazing, amazing author. He's written over 30 books. And he has a solution on how to save 25 years of therapy. This is from the Meaningful Minute. Great book. How do you save 25 years of therapy? I myself have a drug rehab facilities. But he says it and I think he hit it on the button. I want to share something with you that will save you 25 years of therapy. Wow, imagine 25 years of therapy. Therapy is necessary sometimes, but other times it could be avoided. Of course, therapy is needed when there's trauma, when there's a loss in the family. Absolutely, there's therapy is needed. But in general, Shalom, all these things. Here it is. Something happens to you, you take it personally, you get upset. If you don't take it personally, you don't get upset. That's it. That's it. What parts of you takes it personally? The ego. The ego is what takes it personally. We're going to talk about many, many reasons why we take things personally. It's amazing because I recognize, when a person's not in a good state, he can get cut off by a car. And what happens? That same driver is going to all of a sudden, he's going to race to him and start yelling at the guy. But let's say you had a good day that day. That same incident, you're not going to care about the driver. Or let's say all of a sudden somebody cuts you off, and next thing you know, you're looking up to see who cut you off, and you find that it's an old lady. What are you going to say? It had nothing to do with me, she couldn't see. But let's say it's some young punk. What are you going to say? Who do you think you are, etc.? What happened? What changed? What changed? Nothing changed. The same, you got cut off. Why do we care who cuts us off or not? Whether it's the old lady or not. It's because we take it personally. This is just an example on how a person can ruin his day just by taking everything personally. We're going to talk about things from the Mishnah today. So he says, what parts of you takes it personally? The ego, because ego is directly related to the amount of self-esteem. The more self-esteem I have, the less ego. I'm not going to take things personally all the time. But if a person has a very big, everything's about him. He takes everything personal. And if you take everything personal, you can go on a date, oh, she didn't call me back, that means I'm ugly. Huh? Or he cheated on me, that means I wasn't pretty enough. And then you could start developing a terrible self-esteem. You could destroy your life just because you developed a certain stigma on that. And I see this all the time. People constantly are taking things too personal, specifically Shalom Bayit. We need to understand, sometimes our partners, they say something, 8 minutes later, it's like they never said it. It's unbelievable. Can you control somebody's emotions? I can't control somebody's emotions. My partner will say something to me, and I know I have 8 minutes just to not say anything. After those 8 minutes are gone, it's like nothing happened. But if I attack right away, what happens? It turns into 3 hours. You either have 8 minutes or 3 hours. The main thing is we cannot control our partner's emotions. There's no way you can do it. You can't control the way how people wake up in the morning. You can't control what people do to you. You can't control what they say to you. But you can control what it means to you. If you don't take it personally, And you say, oh, look at Grumpy. He got up on the wrong side of the bed. You make it less about you. And this can change your whole life. Because imagine waking up in the morning, somebody gives you the wrong comment. Next thing you know, you wake up with a bad mood the whole day. You're walking around with the whole day giving things the wrong meaning. So it's very, very important. So again, 25 years of therapy. You could save by one thing, not taking things personally. I would say also, taking our thoughts personally. How many times do I get, and I say this all the time, Baruch Hashem, I've done over 700 classes. Every single time I'm done with the classes, I get this negative voice. Okay, stop already. What are you going to say now? Imagine if I listened to everything I thought about. I would have no classes. I would be over with 2 years ago. So we need to understand that Yetzer Hara also is speaking negativity into a person. Don't take things personally. Your thoughts, do not take them personally. I can observe what I'm thinking about. I'm not going to attach to my thoughts. It's so important because if I observe what I think about, I could say, here we go, here's the Yetzer Hara again telling me this, telling me it's never going to work out, telling me I'm never going to get married, telling me etc. Everybody's got a struggle in life. We need to understand that. Believe me, you can have a class in New York for singles, you'll have 1,000 people, and you can have a class for married couples, and you'll have 1,000 people. Let's not pretend that getting married is a solution to all the problems in life. Unfortunately, if we're single, if I just got married, all my problems would be over. We all know that is so far from the truth. And how come the married people are just saying, if I just had Shalom Bayit, I would be happy? Don't you see it's a pattern? God created us with a lack. You're always going to lack something in your life because that's the lack that you approach God with and help, for asking for help. You have to understand, God created us not as a creator, as a sustainer. So he created a system where a person's lacking something, he has to go to his creator and he has to ask for help. That's how it's meant to me. He wants a relationship from the person. He wants you to constantly rely on him and tell him, listen, I have this burden, please take it off my back. It's always, whether it's your wife, whether it's your a person single, or is all of a sudden, okay, the Shalom Bayit is good, next thing you know, their kids in God forbid, in the wrong place. It's never going to end. We need to understand that this rat race never ends, ever. So you get accustomed to it. Okay, thank God these are good in my life. So when you develop resilience in your life, you start saying, you know what? Thank God I do have amazing things in my life. Of course I have things that are lacking. But that's the purpose. The Kosker Rebbe says, there's nothing more greater than a person with a broken heart. And there's nothing worse than a person who thinks he's perfect. Because he's not going to lack anything. He's not going to be hungry. He's not going to pursue anything in life. So having a broken heart is very good. And that's exactly what you're created for. You're supposed to have a broken heart. The broken heart is what gets you closer to your Creator, what gives you more intensity. I know when I have rough days, I get up with a different attitude, with more hunger, with more sense of urgency. And when things are going too good sometimes, what happens? We get a little lazy, we take things for granted, we don't, especially in Miami. Doesn't take much. But why does that happen all the time? It's amazing. How come all of a sudden, a person can all of a sudden almost get into a car accident? He gets saved. 5 minutes later, he forgets about it. Oh, thank you. But let's say that same person got into the car accident. He broke his leg. And next thing you know, he got healed from his leg. He throws a big party thanking God that he got cured from his leg. How come you're not doing that when nothing happened to you? How come you have to throw a party when the foot broke and you had to get healed and now you have much more gratitude? You understand? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. We should say, why not throw the party when I got saved and I had no headaches? Why am I throwing the party when I got out of the pain? Because this is our nature. We don't appreciate the little things. Things get right away. Something good happens to you, it bounces off like velcro, like a sponge. But something bad happens to you, it gets recorded in our brains. That's the way our brains work. Our brains are work to protect us. There's a great book here, The Stress Solution, and he says something amazing. He says, nobody remembers compliments in life, but every time you remember that when somebody hurts you, Every single time you remember somebody hurt you. Why? Because our brains protect us from getting hurt again. So it stores that memory over and over and over again. So next thing you know, you see the person, oh, that's the person that did that to me. And next thing you know, you start having all kinds of cortisol, all kinds of stress, etc. And you develop a negative schema. So what happens when you have this? Then you start, unfortunately, you can live with a very dysfunctional view of life. You start losing hope, etc. But you need to understand, it's not me, it's my thoughts. So we also cannot take thoughts personally. When you take your thoughts personally, what happens? You become them, and you have no hope. You feel like you're hopeless. But just recognize, you're a soul, you're not a thought. So it's very important to separate, to recognize what the job of the evil inclination. Evil inclination is one thing, is to make you miserable. Rabbi Nachman says, the evil inclination is to do one thing, is to make you crazy and to give up in despair. And unfortunately today, there's a lot of people, unfortunately, despairing. So we want to focus on one thing, not taking anything personally, creating that space between, even in a zivu, even how many times, a person walks out of a date and they walk out with a terrible mood after because the other person didn't like them. That doesn't mean you're less pretty. It doesn't mean, it just means that person's not for you. You have to make sure to question that. Some people just go with that thought and it becomes their life. And then they attract that same situation again because then they feel they're not pretty enough and then they become desperate to connect to the guy. And next thing you know, all of a sudden you develop a very, very bad, you go on the dates desperate and guys see that and then the guys don't want anything to do with you. From one date. And it's true. And you have to recognize, why am I thinking like this? His opinion has nothing to do with me. My wife has a company called Hold. She has models working for her. And all of them, their self-esteem is gone because somebody cheated on them. So they think they weren't pretty enough. If they were pretty enough, they would never got cheated on. No. The guy's in Miami, he's as good as his options. As good as his options. It's the truth. It's Miami. This is this town. If you don't have spirituality, a person's as good as his options in this town. But it's nothing to do with you. Don't take it personally. I hate to be so blunt and honest, but this is what happens. It's what happens. So, but if that person starts taking it personally, next thing you know, I'm not pretty enough, and they start losing self-esteem just because of one incident. You have no idea how many times I've seen this in recovery. One incident, a bad childhood. Next thing you know, what do they say? If my father would have loved me more, he would have paid more attention to me. Maybe your father was not able to give what he can give at the time. Maybe he was stressed out. So your whole childhood could be dependent on a negative view, and next thing you know, you're not going to take the right jobs because you feel you're not worthy enough. This could lead to a very, very, very bad ending. And I see that all the time, and I said, I need to make a class on stop taking things personal. I never forget when I first started doing the classes, people were reaching out and they're giving negative comments, which is fine. Listen, you have thousands of people. Of course, people are going to be upset. And I used to get upset by the negative comments. I'm like, I can't control what people think. And I don't want to make everybody happy. This is the class. You like it, you don't like it. But I used to start worrying about it. If I get the right feedback, I didn't get the feedback. I said, I couldn't care less right now. Now I couldn't care less. But back then I was so sensitive. And anybody that said something bad, I would get upset about it. And I'm like, why am I getting upset? I'm just speaking what's in the books. That's nothing to do with me. So you could see how much this affects our life, not taking things personally, and that's all from the ego. How many times we had an incident the other day. A rabbi asked this girl, do me a favor, put on the shawl. So what happened? She got offended. She says, that's it. No more synagogue, no more Shabbat, no more this, no more that, no more this. Done. The whole thing you dropped in 1 minute because the rabbi asked you to put a shawl on. So sometimes we have spiritual racism. Now all rabbis are bad. Everybody's bad. Or you have one bad teacher in school. Every rabbi is no good. I don't want to have anything to do with it. Huh? One person did it. Not everybody. You're going to have racism, spiritual racism for a whole religion just because of one incident? How many times do we hear that? I don't want to have anything to do with it. This rabbi said something to her when he was sick. You know how many stories I have like this? And what happens is you never live your potential in life because you come up with one excuse and you never question your thoughts. You never questioned it. You just went with it, and that became your life. And what does self-pity do? The number one thing self-pity does is one thing. It's a waste of time. There's no greater waste of time in the world than self-pity. Hashem doesn't like it because Hashem closes one door and He opens up another one right away. But you have to be in a position to have another door open. And you need to question, you have to recognize, why am I stereotyping everything based on one incident? The dating scene is horrible. You went on 2 dates. There's no jobs in Miami. You went on one interview. Do you see how people are so quickly, and next thing you know, what are they going to do? They're going to blame God. Look, you left me like this. One job. Maybe it wasn't meant to get that job. So we have to cut the imagination. Reb Nachman says that the new imagination, the new Yetzer Hara today is the imagination. You have to cut the imagination. The Jews, right before they were going to come down, Moshe Rabbeinu came down. They misinterpreted him coming down. They thought 40 days. He came down in 40 days. They were on the 39th day in the afternoon. They misinterpreted just by a little bit. And you know what happened? They built the golden calf. Just one misinterpretation. We also have to question ourselves. When things get, especially when we're exhausted, especially when we're tired, those are the times to halt. Stop. Stop what you're thinking about. Regroup. There's a thing in psychology called halt. If you're hungry, stop. Because chances are you're going to eat more than you're going to want to eat. A, if you're angry, stop. Stop what you're doing. Get into a different state. L, if you're lonely, stop. And T, if you're tired, stop. These things, these conditions will end up, a guy comes home, he's tired. His wife says, what do you want to eat? Make what you always make all the time, the same thing. One comment, because you're in a bad state. Next thing you know, what do I have? I have an abusive husband, etc., etc. This is the way it's going. And that's the Yetzer Hara. People are going down. People are majoring in minor things. Of course, there is abusive relationships. There's no question. But what I hear, mostly, it's the stupidest things that people are breaking things up. People are fighting with people for the stupidest things. And you understand, when a person's in a state of machlochet, when a person's in a state of fighting, he pushes away 100 opportunities. Our sages say, when you're fighting over something, you push away one machlochet, one fight, you push away 100 opportunities. That means there's value to that. Don't think that a person having a fight, because when a person's he's in a state of distress, how can he have something good happen to him? He's not in a position, because the only way that the Creator gets revealed to a person is one way, through happiness. So you have to fight negativity, because you have to be in a position to receive. Like I said very times, I've had the toughest days, but as long as I held on in those days, sometimes at 3 o'clock, I got a phone call that changed my life. Let's say that day I wasn't fighting negativity, because you do have to fight negativity today. You do have to fight negativity. How do you fight negativity? By focusing on the good in your life. Recognizing it's okay with a lack. I'm perfectly happy. There's nothing perfect in the world. You are created imperfect. And it's okay to have a lack. It's okay to have a broken heart. That's the purpose. That's the space that God wants you to get closer to Him. But if a person if it's not perfect, it's no good, then what happens? His expectations will destroy his life. And then he gets depressed, God forbid. And then all of a sudden, opportunities don't come to you, and you attract. And when your person's dating, you'll start attracting the wrong people. I spoke to today. I had a class on soulmates. When a person has a bad date, what should he do the next morning? He shouldn't say, "I'm done dating." That's not the answer. He should say, "Why am I attracting this kind of people? I need to put myself in a position to attract better people." He should pray and ask, how do I become better, not bitter? Bitter people. Better people. We need to fight that, because that specifically, when a person has the bad day, when a person has a trauma, when a person has a tough day, those are the days where you're more prone, when you're in a tired state, when you're in this state, you're more prone to give up. You're more prone to have yeush. You're more prone to have despair. But if you recognize, why am I making things worse than it is? All I have to do is view it as is, not worse than it is. Today's today, tomorrow's tomorrow. I can't tell you how many times I do this, and it helps me tremendously. It helps me tremendously because I have major waves in my life that I'm dealing with. But it's it's only staying in the moment, maximizing the day that I'm able to get through. And otherwise, I would never have the head to do these classes if I'm focusing on my problems. I would never have the head. I would never have it. So I'm trying to teach people a way to cope with it. And this is strictly out of the book of Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman clearly says, even the Gemara says, that a tzaddik falls down 7 times and he gets up the 8th. So falling down, having a lack, a person should stop having self-incrimination. It's okay to fall. The question is not the fall. The question is what do I do next? What do I do next? And it's very, very important because remember how I feel about myself, what things mean. If, for example, if I view, let's say my relationship with my Creator, I'm taking it too personally. Every time something happens to me, I view it as a threat. I'm taking it too personal. It's a challenge. If I view that everything my Creator does for me, He's giving me a challenge, I'm more likely to have a better attitude in that challenge. But if I think every time something happens to me, I'm getting threatened, then what am I going to do? I'm going to shy away from anything. I'm going to shy away from prayer. I'm going to shy away from everything. And again, this is all the result of the ego. That's the Yetzer Hara. The ego and the Yetzer Hara are the same. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. But that's what we need to recognize. This is the battle in life. So number 1, stop taking things personally. Your thinking, your relationships, what people say to you. You can't control how people get up in the morning, especially again, if you're married, you have no shot if you took everything personal. You wouldn't make it past the honeymoon. You need to understand, I cannot control. The Gemara clearly says that the world is contained by a person who doesn't answer back in an argument. Unbelievable. You know what kind of power that is? Because self-control is really the key today. Because there's 2 people that I'm giving kavod. Either I give honor to God. How do I give honor to God? By overcoming my nature to respond back. My nature in life is to respond back. But when I overcome my nature to respond back, what am I going? I'm doing something above nature. So what happens? Something above nature has to happen to me. But you're never going to do that unless you take a space and you say, let me observe the situation. Let me respond to this person, not react to that person. If I can't control that space and I can't make space between that, then automatically you're going to be triggered by previous events and you're going to go right back at it, and it's going to be the same Shalom pattern problem. The same pattern. You fight this happens, 3 hours. It's the same pattern. So what we need to do is we need to do one thing. We need to break the pattern. How do you break the pattern? You change your state. You say, let's talk about this afterwards. In a better state, and when you're in a better state, then you deal with the same situation, but in a better mood, not in the same state, because you're never going to win an argument. And this is exactly what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says, remember, once you recognize this, you start having more, the more you lose control in life, the less likely you're going to have self-esteem. The Mishnah says in chapter 5, Mishnah 7, 7 things categorize a clod, and 7 categorize a wise man. A cloud would be a guy he's not all there. A wise man does not speak to one who is superior in wisdom. He does not interrupt the words of his friends. He's not hasty to answer. He asks what's relevant and answers according to the law. He addresses first things first. Concerning what he hasn't heard, says, I have not heard, and he's okay. He's responding. A person who's takes things personally. Where were you? What do you care where I was? Why are you asking where I was? I just asked you where you were. That person is not a wise person because he's responding already out of an attack. He's taking it personally. He just asked you where you were. You have employees? Do me a favor, why didn't you come in at this time? Don't you see my schedule? Blah, 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 blah. I just asked you, why didn't you come in this time? And they're arguing with why didn't they come in that. So you know that person is not going to be emotionally the right employer for you. So what are the 7 things? And I always say this, that the two main things to have Shalom Bayit for the husbands is two things. It's self-control and self-confidence. Very important. I would say the two things. If you want to master your Shalom Bayit, you need to have self-control. You need to self-control. Obviously today is, God forbid, addictions, lack of self-control. So a woman sees that her husband has no self-control. Anytime he has a problem, he's running to the bars, he's running to other things. He can't control himself. That is a big threat to a woman. Because what is he going to do next? Self-control can only be done if a person's in a soul state. And self-confidence. If sometimes I said today, sometimes a wife has to be a coach, sometimes a wife has to be a cheerleader. When he's struggling in life and he needs to pick up, you need to be the cheerleader. You need to tell him, remember who you are. Remember how great your life is, how good you were. Remember look how you provided. That's the time to be a coach when he's down, when he's struggling. That's not the time to be a coach saying, look at you, schmuck, look what you're doing to my life. That's the time you have to lift them up. The problem is sometimes the women have the wrong order. They have the wrong order. When he's struggling, you have to tell him, listen, hang on. I know you can do it. She has to give him the chizuk. When he thinks everything is good, he doesn't have to do nothing, he's good, his ego gets high, then she has to coach him and tell him, listen, remember who you are. Remember where you came from. So that's the proper order, because technically our wives are there to check our ego. It's not, but that's the way God created the world. You're going to file a class action lawsuit against your creator? You can't do nothing. That's what he did. That's what he created. He created as she would be a mirror to you, and if you were worthy, she would help you. If you weren't worthy, she would go against you. That's what the Gemara says. So it's up to us, according to our self-control and our self-control and our self-confidence, whether our wives support us or whether our wives are against us. So you really can't blame too many people but the mirror. The mirror is really your enemy. It's the person himself that really has to work. And that's why the wife is always that, she does that both. Assuming that the wife is spiritually in tune, not Instagram in tuned. Assuming like she's spiritual and she has good intentions, not that she's lost in La La Land either. But assuming she has that intention, then she has that ability. So just like the Mishnah says here, that when a person asks you something, what do you have to do? You don't have to interrupt the conversation. When a person asks you something, why do you have to answer in the middle of the conversation? Let them speak. When a person cannot just say something, he can't speak, he interrupts him right away, it's a sign of taking things personally, it's a sign of attacking, it's a sign of responding, and it's a sign of an ego. Because an ego is very sensitive, it doesn't want to be harmed. Second, he's not hasty with his answer. And he's comfortable saying, I haven't heard, I don't know everything. You're right, maybe I was wrong. He's comfortable saying that I'm comfortable with responding. But when you get interrupted, it's almost like, I gave this example. Imagine you're at Louis Vuitton's, and next thing you know, you tell the guy, listen, something's wrong with the bag. And the salesman starts screaming at you. What would you say to the guy? Wait a minute, you can't scream at a customer. So I always say that the husband is the merchandise and the wife is the customer. And if the customer is complaining, it's because the merchandise needs a little work. So what are you supposed to, what's the number one thing to make a customer do? Just let him speak and make the customer happy. And then the customer says, even you can say, you're right. I'm sorry, I won't do it next time. And the customer, okay, that's all I needed to hear. And the customer goes away. But if you start arguing with the customer, what's going to happen? It just gets worse and worse, and you lose self-control. So Shalom Bayit is the customer versus the merchandise. The merchandise needs improvement, the customer is going to complain. And that's usually the relationship between responding. But I tell people all the time, you could be in an argument for 8 minutes, or you can be in 3 hours. That depends on how you hold your ground. And sometimes it's Hashem himself that's testing the person to see what's he going to do. Is he going to have self-control? Rabbi Nachman says here in lesson 22, he's saying that the desire to win arguments, a person always has a desire to win arguments, that person is very far from the truth. The more you want to win arguments, it's the more of an indication that you're very far from the truth. Because remember, we have to make Hashem happy, not I have to win. And he says it's an indication when a person is always wanting to win on today, it's because he hasn't spent his time spiritually. He hasn't taken his blood on spiritually. Because if I would have put my time in, let's say I'm busy working or I'm busy helping people, why do I have to win? Who cares who wins? Who cares who wins? I want peace. But if a person's always arguing, it's an indication that he's very far from the truth. And all of his enemies will go towards him against him. So you don't want to win in an argument. You want to walk away and you want to stop the pattern. Once you start doing that, all of a sudden your days become longer. The Rabbi says also, when our days become longer, what does that mean? Wealth means a person has a long breath. He thinks, he can breathe, his days are full. But what happens when a person is constantly fighting? What happens? His days are very shortened. His breath, when a person is fighting, when a person is angry, his breath is shortened. And the word neshama, which is soul, and neshima is the same thing. So according to how you're breathing, is how your soul is connected. So your breath, when a person takes a long breath, when he contemplates, that's why people when peak athletes, what do? They connect themselves to their breath. Your breath is very, very connected, because either you're sanctifying your breath, you're sanctifying by holding in, not taking it personally, or letting it out. The same nose. When a person angers you, instead of having anger towards him, what do? Compassion for the person. You take a breath and give him compassion. Again, this is wonderful saying this at 9 o'clock at night when everybody's calm. But do this at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when somebody pisses you off. Do this at 5 o'clock. This is not it's not a problem right now. The problem is in the middle of when a person gives you that line. But once you start recognizing, there's a concept called win-win. That means I have to win here, and when I win here, I win upstairs. So Shalom Bayit, it's about winning with God, because God is where the Shekhinah is where a person has peace. When there's peace between two people. So the husband, if he's smart, what does he do? He makes sure whatever he needs to do to get the win. Because if he wins down here, he wins upstairs. If he doesn't win down here, he loses upstairs. Because again, self-controlling, insult, etc. So now you know, the difference between a wise man is not the intelligence, it's more the emotional intelligence. 25% of people now, they don't hire just people for intelligence. They hire people for emotional intelligence. How is he emotionally? What kind of a boss is he? What kind of a player is he? I look at employees today, my emotional intelligence today. Because I can have very, very smart people with a big ego. They don't want to listen. They're always arguing. It's going to pollute the company. But if you have people that are humble, people that are willing to work hard, I would pick that one less intelligent than the other guy, because he's not going to corrupt the whole environment. So it's very, very important. That's what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says one who characterizes between a wise person has to do with a person's emotional intelligence. Another book from David Lieberman, and he gives us a great diagram of your soul. We know we have a soul, we have a body, and we have an ego. The soul always wants to do what is good. The body wants to do what feels good. The body always wants to do what feels good. Go to sleep, go into comfort. The soul wants to do what is good. The ego wants to do what looks good. That's the battle between the body, the soul, and the ego. When you wake up in the morning and it's 4 o'clock in the morning, you want to meditate, who's battling? The body and the soul. The soul wants to meditate. The body wants to go to sleep. The ego, what do you do when a person's arguing with somebody? The ego wants to give it right back to you and tell you what you did. The soul forgives and has compassion. So this is a constant, David Lieberman has this is a constant war between the body, the soul, and the ego. Why is self-esteem so important today? Because if you have self-esteem, you know who you are, then you're not going to take things personal. You're going to recognize, oh, this guy's having a bad day. He's yelling at me. Nowadays, many people love the classes, but many people don't like to hear exactly what they want me to. They don't like what I say. Okay, listen, I'm not changing. That's why specifically I do not take $1. I do not make $1 on these classes, specifically for that reason, because I don't want to be told what to do for money. That's specific. I said, no, thank you. This is spirituality. Let's keep money for business. So this is what it is. I don't want to be told, you can't say this, you could say this, you can't say that. No, this is what's going to happen. This is what it's going to say, if you like it or not. When you have self-esteem, the more your self-esteem increases, the more you love yourself, the less likely you're going to what? Go into an addiction. The more you love yourself, the less likely you're going to do what? Lose yourself. Why would I lose myself if I love myself? I mean, if I love myself, let's take a typical person in therapy. If they love themselves, what are they going to do? They're going to take notes. They're going to say, oh, maybe I was off here. Maybe I never heard of that answer before. I never heard of that anger. A person who doesn't have self-esteem, he doesn't care, wants to go to sleep. Why should I put an effort in somebody I don't like? Right? If I don't like myself, why would I put an effort in somebody I don't like? It's very simple. First you have to, that's why Rav Nachman says the number one thing, first you have to have a zamra. You have to love yourself. You have to focus on your good points, because if you don't love yourself, it's going to be very hard to have self-esteem. So the more self-esteem increases, the more the ego shrinks. That means a person with self-esteem, he's very open-minded. He's willing to listen. Listen, if I'm doing something wrong, tell me if it's constructive criticism, okay, I'm willing to change. I'll do anything. If I'm in the mud and you're offering to help me, of course I'm going to want to get out of the mud. But if a person's in the mud, he doesn't have self-esteem, what is he going to say? What are you doing here? I like the mud. Leave me alone. He's not open-minded. Open-minded means the more self-esteem you have, the more likely you're going to be open-minded. You're going to be ask help from other people. So again, self-esteem increases, ego shrinks, your perspective widens. Why does a 2-year-old cry today? Because his whole perception is, it's all about his broken toy. He can't see that he has a house. He can't see that his mother's taking care of him. He's wiping his diapers. The toy breaks. This is my life, a broken toy. So how come people get upset over every little thing in life? Because their perception is that's where their mind is. Okay, so the Dolphins lost. They've been losing for 20 years. You're gonna get depressed? Nothing's changed. But when a person has a very small perception, then you can't speak to him. Because it's his way or no way. And then what happens? He's not willing to change. He's not willing to be open-minded. The person has self-esteem. He says, listen, whatever I got to do, I'll take. If it's for my wife, if it's from a friend, whatever I got to do, I need help. He gets bailed out. He gets help. Because he's open-minded. He knows he needs the help. Then you're going to be humble. You're going to say, okay, I made a mistake. What do I need to do next? And then you're going to have gratitude. And then you're going to have joy. So remember, the more self-esteem you have, the less ego you're going to have. The less ego you're going to have, the more open-minded. You're going to have more perception. The more perception you're going to be humble, because you're going to say, okay, I made a mistake in this business. I'll try it a different way. I'm going to have humility, and then I'm going to be grateful for the opportunity to restart again. And then you're going to have joy. See, it's a big pattern. And what happens? You're going to be, like, for example, the more a person's closer to God, the more he's going to see God, the more he's going to know God, etc. Let's take it the opposite effect. The less self-esteem, when self-esteem decreases, what happens? The ego expands. Leave me alone. Don't talk to me. I'm good. The ego expands automatically. If you not love yourself, you're going to lose yourself. What happens? Your perception is going to be very small. People are going to want to help you. You're not going to want to listen. Doesn't want to listen. Nobody wants to talk to him. Wants to lay in bed. He's laying in bed all day long. How's that going to help him? He's smoking all day long. How's that going to help him? He's binging all day long. What is that going to help him? He doesn't want to hear. He doesn't want to be bothered, because he doesn't want to risk that he was wrong, or that or her that was wrong. Then what's going to be? Arrogance. Because what happens? Of course we all have failures in our life. But if the failure keeps you down, so when a person quits on life, it's telling his creator, you gave me too much. I quit. When you don't give up, what are you doing? You're saying, this is a challenge. But when you say, you gave me this, it's too much for me, I can't handle it, you stop. You stop. The show's over. And that door is never open in life. What happens when arrogance grows? You're going to be angry at the world, you're going to have anxiety, depression, etc. And then you're going to be further from God. So this is the same pattern. So the first step we have to understand is the more open-minded I am, the more opportunities I'm going to have in my life. That means I have to have a self-esteem. I have to love myself. If I love myself, I'm open to anybody, because Rabbi Nachman says clearly that every single person has a different way of looking at something that you don't. That's why he created connection. The way he's going to look at my problem is going to be completely different than the way I'm going to look at it. So we're forced in life to ask for help for other people, because that person can see without the emotional tie to it. So we're always forced to ask for help. Listen, help me. I can't figure it out myself. So you're giving him a chance to help you, which gives him serotonin. It gives you serotonin because now you feel like you're connected, and that's the battle. But the minute you cut and you don't ask for help, what happens? I don't want to help. Don't tell me what to do, etc., etc., etc. So, and then the God goes away from that person. So that's how you see people with all their problems, they can't figure out their solution because they're too focused on their problem. They're too focused on what they're going through instead of where they're going. I'm focused too much on what I'm going through instead of where I want to go. If I focus on where I want to go, lights are on. And I don't take things personal. It's okay. You fall in a business. Remember, we have to understand. Every success, how do you get experience in life? Failure. What other way can you get experience? I'm sure Jenny made a lot of rough cookies before she made the good ones. How do you get experience in life? Failure. Failure gives you what? Experience. And experience gives you success. You can't jump the line. You can't jump the line. It's part of creation. The vessels first shattered. God created worlds and he destroyed them before he built this world because he didn't like them. So it's already built in. Failure is a built-in concept in life. Trauma is already built in. There's the trauma. There's the tzimtzum. The tzimtzum is that free will. What are you going to do next? God gives you a space in life. He hits you with trauma, and then he gives you that space in life where he moves away from the picture, and he says, okay, what are you doing with this? What are you doing next with this? That's the tzimtzum. The tzimtzum means God removed himself from me. It's only up to me. And I had a great case. I wanted to promote an employee to two or three stores. Back then, they were only managing one store. But I said, listen, before you promote that kind of employee, you have to test them. How do you know? Maybe, listen, one thing is one store, one thing is 3 stores. So what did we have to do? We had to send a fake customer with cash. That's the tzimtzum. I'm giving him a test. I want him to pass the test. I want to promote him. But I also have to leave a space for free choice for him to make the right decision. Because if I don't leave that space for free choice, then I'm telling him what to do. There's no free choice. And he can't get rewarded. He can only get rewarded if he has that space to make the free choice and to make to make the right choice. The same thing in our lives. That's why you're not going to understand the test. The test is going to come from nowhere. But that's the test. Like me, of course I want that person to pass, to not steal. But he has to prove it to me. Am I being cruel? No, I have to do that in order, because if he wants a bigger keli, a bigger vessel, he has to be tested. And that's the story of our lives. That's why God is always hidden and he's revealed. He's hidden and revealed. He can't be revealed all the time, because then there would be no free choice for you. And then there would be no point of creation. The creation is in the chaos. What happens next? So that's creation over and over. You can apply this, all of a sudden you can have 2 good weeks of Shalom Bayit, and next thing you can go say, Shalom, I had it. What happened? Shalom Bayit to Shalom, I had it. Have we all said that? Yes. How come we can go from great to next thing you know, I can't take it anymore? What happened? That's the tzimtzum. That's the tzimtzum. That's the test. And this is life. Money test. You have good days in retail, rough days, good days in the stock market. Amazon goes up, Amazon goes down. It's a constant yo-yo pattern of life. So you can't quit, because if you quit, you never get the good day. And you can't always want good days either, so you have to build resilience and mental strength. And to be able to hang on when you are getting tested. And just like when you hear an alarm, this is just a test. That little word has to go into your head. Don't try to understand it. People get stuck because they try to understand the test. You can't understand the test, because if you could understand it, it wouldn't be a test. That's faith. I can't understand faith. Faith is not meant to be understood. Faith is, I have to first believe, and then I will see. No, I want to see it and then believe it. That's not the way the creation is made. First you have to believe, and then you see. If you're focusing on seeing and then believing, you might not see it. Because that's the test where you have to believe. All right? That's today's class.